You mentioned Legos. I just wanted to say that uh, there's a former park in Florida called Cypress Gardens that's being transformed into a new place called Legoland. It's going to be a park mainly for children, but Legos are these little blocks that you put together and build things. Uh, it just reminded me of that when you said that. I do agree with you that scientists discover uh, the way what exists, the way things work, the way things interact in nature. Engineers are the ones who arrange things and make complex objects, and inventors, engineers and inventors. Uh, Kind of an unusual example, a difficult example perhaps to think about is one in which scientists have created absolutely new elements in the laboratory. In other words, if you look at the periodic table, there are some elements of high atomic weight which have actually been created by human beings. That is, we have never found them in nature, and they were actually produced in the laboratory by people colliding atoms together and getting something different. Now, the new elements that are produced thereby have what we call emergent properties. So this is kind of a case where human beings have created properties different from the constituent elements that they started out with. They're not making something out of nothing, they're making something out of something. And new properties come about as a result of putting together elements that have different properties. I was wondering about your thought about that example.
Yeah, I think, again, as you mentioned, that's really not the creation out of nothingness. That's just arrangement at, I will say, more micro level. It's just a creation it's just an arrangement at the micro level. So in other words, instead of just arranging those big pieces and making a building, making a computer, now you're going and playing with the subatomic particles and trying to arranging them, and then you come up with something that you call elements, I don't know, like X or element Z. That doesn't matter. The point is that what you're doing is basically a rearrangement, but at more small level and small scale. So, and that's why I don't see it's game changing. It's the very same game that we're playing. It's a game we're playing with the piece of Lego, but we're just playing with kind of very small piece of Lego and try to see what we can come up with something, new with those arrangements. So, but I think the key question now, remember, we try to really see whether we can come up with some conclusive evidence regarding God. So I think that's basically one of the key questions that we try to answer. So the discussion that we have so far is basically telling us that perhaps when we study those objects in the universe, and those in this case, if we can see something out there which comes out of nothing, which cannot be attributed to those material causes. And I think that in that we might find something interesting in referring to another power which could create out of nothing, because we both agree that we can't do that. We both agree that we can't do because of the limitation of our power, and it hasn't been our experience. Now the question is there any example around us that we look at, we say, you know what, it seems like there is a creation out of nothingness. So, and that creation, or the emergence out of nothingness might be a sign or might not be the sign. That's, I think, perhaps the one point that we can talk about it.
Okay, your hypothesis is that there is at least one person in the universe who can and has created something out of nothing. That is your hypothesis. My question is there any evidence to support that hypothesis? Is there any evidence against that hypothesis? My answer to the first question is no. My answer to the second is yes. I can begin the project of testing persons to see if they can create something out of nothing. I can start with you, and I can ask you, Furkan, please create something out of nothing for me. You will not be able to do it. I can test myself. I will not be able to do it. And I can gradually move from one person to the next to test them to see if they can make something out of nothing. My claim is if I were to do that, I would soon reach 6.5 billion persons. We could even test the chimpanzees and dolphins in case someone wants to claim that they are persons. But I can test every known person and show you that zero, absolutely zero of those people, persons, can make something out of nothing. Therefore, what's the probability that there exists somewhere in the universe a person who can create something out of nothing? Probability is zero or close to zero. Every person that I test that cannot make something out of nothing is evidence against your hypothesis. It's one little piece of evidence. I can present to you at least 6 billion pieces of evidence against your hypothesis. You can present absolutely no examples of a person creating something out of nothing. I think this person doesn't exist. I call it super improbable because never in the history of human knowledge has there ever been a demonstration that any person can create something out of nothing. So I think that's a kind of a figment of your imagination. It's sort of like you might think that a person can fly. Well, I would say demonstrate this, that a person can fly, unaided by technology, of course. You'll come up with zero. Same thing with a person creating something out of nothing. We come up with zero. So your hypothesis, while possible, is super improbable.
Okay. You know what? I perhaps will make just 100% opposite arguments. I will say it's I will say that the evidence showing such infinite power are overwhelming, are everywhere. And I will say it is absolutely, for me, when I open my eyes and use my mind and look around, it's absolutely impossible for me to imagine that what I have experienced and observed could happen without such infinite power. So, but what understand that's you have difficulty to see that. I think it's mainly because either you are not willing to see, you just simply close your eyes, or you are being blinded by what I call atheistic explanation of the reality. So, and that's why I think what I say there are two dogma. I think that every kind of dogma is really not good, and we should be against it. I call it there's a scientific dogma and there is religious dogma, and actually both dogma make people blind to the reality. Even though in one way you have religious people, they accept something and they blindly follow it without really understanding what they believe in it, and they can even go, fight for it because it is really it is a dogma, is not really a faith on evidence, is not, so, and I'm against, this kind of, even if it's religious, I'm against those kind of dogma. And I think that we turn, in this age, we turn science to another dogma as well. What I say, to me, that I do not believe in the existence of God because I have been told that there is a supreme being, or because there is a book called or claimed to be from God, and the book says there is God. That's why I believe in it. For me, belief is not a